highly accomplished speaker who's going to do the talk. She is from Consensys, and it's a company that doesn't need much introduction. Anyone using MetaMask, you know that they are the creators of MetaMask and other great products that they're building in Web3. Nayana Singh is the general manager and head of product at Consensys. She's had a great career working for companies like Motorola and Microsoft, heading strategic projects and in program management, and also being a product leader. And she's been with Consensys now as their GM. Her talk is on what's driving adoption of tokenization projects. It will be a fairly high level overview of what's happening and how hopefully she'll address some of the things being done to overcome some of the hurdles as well. So look forward to her presentation. With that, I'd like to turn over to Nayana. She has an MBA from Booth School of Business. Had a great interaction. Over to you, Nayana.
Thank you so much, Tanvir. That was I hope I can live up to that wonderful introduction. Can everybody, before we get started, two things. Does anyone know that you must be going back to back? Are we okay, Tanvir, to just get started?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll probably try and do a bio break after you're done. So please continue.
All right. And second, can everybody see my screen?
Yes,
can everyone
see you.
See my picture? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just wanted to do a tech check. Well, thank you so much, Tanvir, for the opportunity to speak to everybody here. I loved the previous presentation. I think Daniel did a great job actually talking about some of the specifics, and I think and set the stage up, if you will, to talk about why tokenization is so important in the Web3 industry, as well as, I think to the future of industrialization, if you will. As Tanvir gave an introduction, I won't speak a lot, but there are a couple of things that I do want to mention from my background perspective, especially if people made the jump from Motorola to Microsoft to Consensys. I actually worked when I was in Motorola, I was leading this charter. Back in the day, I was a systems architect. I started my career as a developer, and we were working on Web3. And this, I would say, I'm dating myself with this information, but this was back in the 2007, 2008 timeframe. When Python, as an example, was still being developed. Believe it or not, like some of us contributed to Python. And we were thinking about, well, what does Web3 mean even during that time? So I was very, very interested right from day one on about how you actually transition from a world from Web 1 to Web 2 to Web 3. And in Microsoft, my career has always taken me to, setting up new businesses. How do you scale up new businesses from an idea to ideation to scale? And so for those of you who are interested, you can take a look at my LinkedIn profile. I've worked in many such businesses, and one of these businesses was for the Web3 business. And Microsoft back in 2018, 17, 18.
Hey, Nayana, we lost you for a second.
No, someone muted me. It said someone muted me.
Sorry about that.
So big companies like Microsoft were actually looking at and still continue to look at Web3. Back in the day, there was no tokens were just coming up in blockchain, and we started looking at what is some of the most fundamental aspects of technology that the companies can use. And believe it or not, we started looking at tokenization, and we actually developed a service. And Microsoft holds a number of patents around tokenization, whether they are non-fungible, based on fungible or non-fungible tokens, and that IP really working on all of these new technologies really developed my interest in what we can do within Web3, especially within that in the tokenization space, and that really what's helped me make the transition from a big company like Microsoft to Consensys. And the reason I thought this was important for me to mention to this audience is that whether people are looking at it from a consumer perspective or enterprise perspective, tokenization is here to stay. And that I think is really important. The macroeconomic situation, I think right now, is not really conducive, obviously, to a lot of liquidity in the market. So we're, I think, seeing a little bit of a slowdown. I would also say that the hype of the non-fungible token did not help the real life use cases and scenarios. So, I'm hoping, and I think we're seeing in the industry that all of that is going to actually weed out the weak players, and we're going to make the token economy a lot more strong. So with that, let me just jump into what I kind of wanted to talk to you about today. In particular, the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is, as we think about tokenization, really there are two things that we need to be to keep in mind. The first one is, what are the drivers that are going to help us here? And the second are, what are some of the barriers to entry and how do we overcome that, right? And and before jumping in, and I'm assuming this audience is very familiar with tokens, but I just wanted to do a level set. When we think about the Web3 economy, we're looking at the most fundamental aspects, and I would say the most attractive aspects to a layman as well as anybody from Web2 is digital assets. And digital assets really are of two types. And both of these two types of tokens are really important, because we tend to separate when we say tokens versus when we say NFTs. We're kind of meaning two different things, but they're all these digital asset types are really tokens, and tokens are of two types: fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens. So starting with NFTs, non-fungible tokens, this is a huge hype. What are non-fungible tokens? They represent physical, digital, or intellectual property, right? So these are unique. They help us verify authenticity, and they help us protect as well as certify ownership. So they're unique type of tokens. What are fungible tokens? Fungible tokens are really interchangeable tokens that are interchangeable with one another. They are homogeneous. They have the same equal value, and each unit is the same as any other unit. So a great example of this is a stable coin, right? Or a cryptocurrency, if you will. And I just wanted to kind of separate this, because just being focused on having spent a part of my career within the token space, I think it's important to get this distinction right. Like, these are all tokens, fungible and non-fungible tokens. NFTs are just happen to be non-fungible tokens. And another pet peeve of mine that I kind of do want to mention, tokens and NFTs are the product, right? When you talk about a token, people are just like talking about what a token do. But really, at the end of the day, these are just the technology. These will be just the technology. So if you look, NFTs is nothing but a non-fungible token. Token is nothing but a specific type of a standard, like an ERC20, right? So these are critical components for the success of Web3, because moving forward, they will form the foundation of the applications that are going to be built on top. But at this point, they're hyped as the product themselves, which I think is a little bit inaccurate. And when people talk about it, and when some of these NFTs and tokens really don't do well, there is a lot of disinterest in the market. But what they don't realize is that Web3 is a new technology, and it's continuing to grow. And the NFTs and token is really just some of those standards that are going to help build out the applications of the future for tomorrow. So let's take an example of the type of different tokens, right? And this, I think, I just kind of wanted to spend a little bit of time here today, because here we can also talk about what's happening in the real world before we actually start to think about the advantages or the disadvantages or the barriers that exist in the tokenization world today. So tokens in Web3, they're the foundation that hold a lot of potential for the future. Like, not only for, I would say, the financial architecture, but, it just forming the infrastructure of many of the systems. The most well-known token are Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? Like, these are currencies, or even the USDA token, right? These are currencies that we can buy, we can sell, we can trade, and they're very well known. But there are also many other examples that, of course, people who are very familiar with the Web3 world would know. But the reason why these are going to continue to grow in importance and the property. So for those of you, some of you may not be familiar, but the St. Regis Aspen Resort back in a few years ago actually was thinking about what is the way that they can actually open up their infrastructure, if you will, and ownership to a broader variety of people. How can they help these people self-select and take advantage of their portfolio? And what they did was they tokenized a portion of its ownership using blockchain. And this really allowed the investors to purchase tokens that representing the fractional ownership in the hotel, right? This allowed them to access potential rental income and take advantage of the capital appreciation. And this is really important because this is very similar to how today we buy Bitcoin or Ethereum in the same fractional way as well. CryptoKitties is a great example of another blockchain-based game where the players could collect, breed, trade these virtual cats, etc. Right? For those of you who are familiar, Spice VC Fund is a venture capital fund that tokenized its ownership shares as security tokens as well. There are so many commodities that fall into the categories. The Paxos Gold is a great example, right? Paxg is a digital token that represents the ownership of physical gold. Each of the token is backed by one fine troy ounce of a London good delivery gold bar as well, which are stored in the vaults, by the way, right? So the investors can trade and buy, sell, and trade gold without actually the need of physical interaction, if you will. In the gaming and the virtual worlds as well, Decentraland, as in the next slide, I'll talk about it a little bit, is an example we typically used for representing when we talk about NFTs. We talk about gaming in a pretty big way, right? Because NFTs tend to represent a lot of assets within that. But one of the things that that's important to note is in gaming, NFTs are famous, but it's also underpinned by a token or a fungible token. So where the users can say buy, sell, develop parcels of virtual land. And in this case, it happens to be through the ownership of their mana tokens. And the ownership of land is represented. Now the ownership can be represented by NFTs that allows users to create and monetize. But this is a really interesting byplay to think about because you kind of need this interaction of the tokens and the NFTs in a very meaningful way. Supply chain is seeing a lot of tokenization. I would say Starbucks, Walmart, and IBM Food Trust are getting into this. For transparency and accountability, I think Starbucks has published a farm to cup. They're using farm to cup as if in a big way, and the back end of the supply chain is tokenized, so a user can actually see where the cup of coffee that they're drinking, where is that coming from. Again, that is done through the interplay of both tokens and NFTs. Daniel, as he talked about the energy and carbon credits business, right? There are so many foundations that are such as the Rainforest Foundations, etc. UK are using tokenized carbon credits. The carbon credits and carbon offsets are tokenized as well, so that you can exchange them and you can buy and sell them, you can trade them, etc. So with some of those real life examples, let's also take look at some of the endless applications in the various industries for NFTs. And I want to spend a little bit of time here as well, again, because when people talk about NFTs, they're really just scratching the surface, because what captures everybody's imagination is some of the scenarios around gaming and trading of digital art and collectibles. I think that particular hype played a very important role in making tokens and NFTs famous. So I would never discount that. But I want to say that there is more to Web3 tokens and NFTs than what we see. Yes, NFTs are widely used to verify the ownership and authenticity of digital art and collectibles, such as digital paintings, illustrations, even tweets. And this has opened up a lot of business models for creators to monetize their digital creations. Absolutely, the same thing can be seen within. The same can be applied to gaming and music artists, right? Where in gaming, NFTs are being used to represent in-game items such as weapons and armor and skins. And these can be really just bought and sold and traded like real-world assets. And this allows more opportunities for gamers to own their digital creations. And I think over time, I think what would be really important would be that this will allow not just the gaming companies, but also the gaming developers and the gamers themselves to have a lot more skin in the game and take advantage of the different business model. Same thing goes for, owning virtual real estate, as we just saw in companies like Decentraland, etc. Music and videos, the NFTs are used in the music and the video industry for the same authentication and ownership and distribution rights as well. Sports and memorabilia. But how many of you know how NFTs are actually being used and tokens are being used in healthcare? Clinical trials, they're starting to look at how to track the movement of medical samples and data through clinical trial processes. This is really important because it provides a secure and transparent record of handling and the analysis of samples, right? It allows for ensuring the integrity of the data and to improve the trust in medical trials. Medical records, and all of us know how important medical records are and how important is the security and privacy so they don't get into someone else's hands, or even actually understanding like medical industry. So how do you store these records? What if these records could be NFTs? What if you could provide the patients with greater control of their personal health and information while keeping it secure and private? This could allow for reducing the risk of breaches and unauthorized information as well. Scientific research is also looking at NFTs where they can track the provenance of scientific data to ensure its authenticity. The drug supply chain, just like any other supply chain, is being looked at to track the movement of these products, in this case, the pharmaceutical products, through the supply chain. And this way you can have a secure and transparent record of its handling and distribution. I could kind of go on and on here, but I think one other thing that I want to say that there's been a lot of development is essentially the use of tokens and NFTs in loyalty programs and ticketing and access control, etc. The idea of spending some time talking about some of these applications is to say that where there is a lot of interest, where there are real life use cases and pain points, there will always be continued innovation. There'll be innovation on the business side and there'll be innovation on the technical side. And this is why I think this is not just a trend. This area is here to stay. And this is why I had a slide that kind of talked about that. So far, we've always talked about NFTs and tokens as the product. But frankly, it isn't a product. They are the underpinning technology that's going to allow us to have these endless applications in all these different industries. If you guys have any questions, feel free to share them on the chat. I can take a look at them at the end of I'll keep a few minutes and I'll take a look at the end, and I'm happy to talk. The idea and the focus for today's session is really just to talk about the breadth of what tokens are, what tokenization is. And then I think we can, and then I think when we're all on the same page as to what tokenization and NFTs are, what are the advantages, then I think we can start to have then the creative juices start to churn in terms of, well, how could I take advantage of not only what other companies are doing and how they're leveraging, but then also, how can I avoid some of the pitfalls while taking advantage of this new technology? So now let's take a look at some of the benefits of tokenization. And I was thinking about some of them I tried to put the most relevant, important ones here, but I promise you there are more. And the first and most important one, I think, is the idea of fractional ownership. When I started getting into Web3, one of the biggest concerns for people was that, well, I don't have the money to own a Bitcoin, well, or an Ethereum coin, right? That's the biggest advantage, I think, is we think about, when there are stocks and shares, etc., that people can't, they're not able to buy. The fractional ownership is the single most important benefit that tokenization has brought to us, right? Tokenization allows the assets to be divided into smaller units or tokens, and this lowers the barriers to entry for investors who really can't afford to purchase this entire asset. And it doesn't matter what this asset is. It could be a currency, it could be a piece of real estate, it could be artwork. And this is what really increases the liquidity, if you will, in many markets as well, right? Global accessibility, if you look at it, is really critical, because now these tokens, because they're digital, they can be accessed and traded anywhere. They can be traded 24/7 without the limitation of the traditional trading hours or the geographical boundaries, if you will. And this expands the investment opportunities from an audience perspective. Traditional assets like real estate or private equity or collectibles can be illiquid sometimes, right? So it's very hard it's not that easy to sell them, if you will, sell them quickly in particular. And so with tokenization, secondary markets can be opened up where they can be traded and potentially increase their liquidity and reducing some of these exit barriers, right? And this is one of the big reasons why a lot of the new companies are looking at ICOs instead of IPOs, if you will. The blockchain-based tokenization brings a lot of streamlining to processes like asset issuance, asset transfer, and settlement. This reduces a lot of complexities, like administrative complexities in particular, the paperwork, the intermediaries, and it lowers costs and increases efficiency. Transparency, again, is a very key advantage here. Transactions on the blockchain are recorded in an immutable and transparent manner. And, so it's very hard. I mean, I wouldn't say anything is fraud free, but this immutability allows for a lot of transparency, right? You know exactly what happened and when it happened. So this provides a auditable trail for asset ownership, transfers, and history, which enhances the transparency and reduces fraud. And this is, I would say, depending on what kind of industry it is, different industries are looking at different specific benefits of tokenization and are entering those spaces, right? So if I look at big companies like Starbucks or IBM, etc., they're not getting into it, for instance, tokenization for fractional ownership. They're getting into it for global accessibility. They're getting into it for efficiency. They're getting into it for transparency, etc. Automated compliance is also really important in many cases, because the smart contracts can be programmed to enforce compliance with regulation and contractual terms. So as we actually start to look at the future, this becomes really important, because the enforcement of rules as it relates to different things like dividend distribution, voting rights, etc., is easy as well. And reduced intermediaries, right? You don't need multiple intermediaries such as brokers or custodians or clearing houses. So it means that this can lead to faster, more direct interactions. And last but not the least, interoperability. All these tokens are built on standards like ERC20, 721, 1155, and these can be used across different blockchain platforms and applications. So you're not really, over time, we'll see this become smoother and smoother through, L2s and the bridges, etc. But I think this is really, really going to drive a truly decentralized system. Last but not the least, we talked about this, but innovation in business models is is really what's causing this to take off from a consumer perspective. Now, all of a sudden, tokenization has opened up a venue for all the non-intermediaries, right? If you are a creator, you have content, doesn't matter what the content is, there's a way for you to monetize it, whether through the enterprise or whether through the, or whether directly to, for the consumer, in different ways. And enhanced fundraising, as I said, is also a part of enhanced fundraising, new business models. They all kind of tie in together through ICOs, security, token offerings, etc. So ownership transfer, all of these are like so many more benefits that we can continue to talk about. But in the interest of time, let's move to a couple of other topics that I wanted to touch on as well. So how do you take advantage of some of these? Like, there are some fundamental challenges that are facing us today, whether you want to build it, whether you are a creator, whether you are a developer within Web3, and whether you're just looking to tokenize your application or your scenario. And I want to talk about some of them. There are so if you look at it, the few that we won't talk about all of them here, but I will say that there is more work. The barriers can be divided roughly into 3 categories, right? The first one is a technical limitation. You know what? There is scalability of the blockchain networks. It could be a technical barrier sometimes because, the high transaction volumes and network congestion can hinder the efficiency, right? Scalability is a problem. Interoperability is being worked on, but isn't quite there yet. Similarly, when we think about the smart contract, there are some limitations there, right? The smart contracts are which govern the behavior of the tokens both have complexity in terms of functionality as well as security that can impact some of the tokenization process. There are many companies that are looking to overcome this. This is why we've seen so much development in the infrastructure space. Companies like Consensys, especially through the Infura platform, are working to address this. Then we have the issues around security vulnerabilities and the privacy vulnerabilities and the regulations, right? And again, companies and products like MetaMask are working very hard, both at the infrastructure level as well as working to reduce some of these complexities. Like the tokenization projects in many ways are facing security risks, such as potential vulnerability in smart contracts leading to hacking attempts, how to prevent unauthorized access to tokenized assets. There's a lot of work being done here to digital identity space, etc., to prevent a lot of this. Tokenization involves storage and transfer of sensitive data, and so data protection. How does the government play a role in this? What can be regulated? How should it be regulated is important here as well. And last but not the least, I think the user experience leaves a lot to be desired right now, right? Like, there are a lot of efforts being made to improve this, but until the user experience for whether you're trading assets, whether you're using assets, whether you're playing a game, whether they can be at par with Web2, I think, we will not see as much adoption. So user experience certainly plays a big bridge in terms of the barrier that we actually feel, because many people who are looking to, and many entities and many enterprises that are looking to tokenize their scenarios or tokenize their assets are prevented from doing so because it's not easy, right? Like, when you play a game, so very simply, when you play a game, the gaming experience isn't seamless, if it isn't a very, if you're still, the buying process of your NFT sword, for instance, takes you out of the game, and you have to go and sign into a new wallet and come back, and it's just really hard. It isn't seamless. So how many users are going to actually continue with that particular game? So similarly, if you're going to if you had one place where you could both trade your regular assets as well as your digital assets, then the process is going to be very seamless. So ensuring that a seamless and user-friendly experience for participants can not only provide is not only a technical challenge, but that intuitive interface and efficient process is really important for people, for mass adoption, and if you will, for crossing that chasm. So those are some of the things that we've seen. There's a lot of work going on with companies. I mean, I'm shameless plug for my company Consensys, that's doing a lot of work here, both in terms of, you know, how you as a user can take advantage of these assets and how you can trade them seamlessly. MetaMask needs no introduction. Infura is the backend platform that not only the infrastructure platform that not only allows you to stand up an application of yours, Web3 applications within a day, but it allows you seamless interface with MetaMask. And finally, also diligent. Every single smart contract you read is, as we talked about, is immutable. So there's a lot of work being done on fuzzing and auditing and just the security aspects of some of these that I think are important, that behoove the companies to choose their platforms wisely, if you will. So that was my little talk on tokenization and assets. I want to pause there to see if there are any questions. I can answer anything for you. I'm also happy for you to connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can also have a chat. I know we're out of time, but we can also have a chat at a later time.
No, that was a beautiful talk. You covered so much in a short time and very well articulated. I'm very eager to ask you this question. I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, and there is one ring to rule them all. So will we have a one wallet that is going to rule them all, or what is your because we have so many wallets to deal with nowadays, right?
I think a great question. You're asking someone who actually works for MetaMask. So I would say it would be great. But I think the concept of Web3 is, I think this is where web interoperability comes in, right? And this is where I think the industry right now is fairly distributed. So I think over time, we will see that there'll definitely be some sort of consolidation. And I think it's up to the consumers to decide where, at the end of it, it's going to boil down to ease of use. What is the wallet that will seamlessly integrate and give you the experience you want? And I think that wallet is probably going to win the game. And I would say it's similar to what we see in the browser market. There are multiple browsers, but there are only one or two browsers that people really use in a more meaningful way, that companies want to integrate into a meaningful way, if you will.
This was great. Nayana, this would have been actually a perfect opening keynote, but we had speakers from India and Europe that went ahead of you. But love for you to come back again and speak at TokenExpo, if possible in person or at least virtually. And I'll definitely follow up with you. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, and we will be in touch.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.